The freight consist stretches back nearly a mile. 22 wagons of brown coal, bound east. The gradient here is 1 in 75, not steep by mountain standards, but continuous. 3 kilometers of rising ground with no respite. The locomotive working it weighs 95 tons in working order. Its driving wheels are 1,400 millimeters in diameter. There are 10 of them. 2 cylinders, 600 millimeters bore. Boiler pressure, 228 pounds per square inch. It is climbing. At full regulator, the exhaust beat is fast and sharp. The smoke trail bends south in the November wind. The consist barely wavers. This is East Germany. The year is 1963. And the locomotive pulling that coal, the locomotive the Deutsche Reichsbahn had declared should last 5 years and be scrapped, is in its 21st year of service. It should not exist at all. The blueprint said it was disposable. A mechanic at Stendal had other ideas. The Deutsche Reichsbahn Class 52 was not designed to last. That was the point. In March 1942, the German Railway Administration needed locomotives for the Eastern Front, fast in enormous numbers, without consuming the skilled labor or strategic materials that a proper locomotive required. The result was a machine built to a philosophy of deliberate impermanence. The pre-war Class 50 had taken 37,000 man-hours to build. The Class 52 took fewer than half. 6,000 parts were eliminated or simplified. The boiler used a lower-grade steel alloy. In the superheater was reduced. Smoke deflectors were omitted. The locomotive would never run fast enough to need them. 17 different manufacturers built them across Germany, Austria, and occupied Poland. 6,719 were delivered between 1942 and 1950. The documentation was as fragmented as the production. Each factory held its own partial drawings. No single complete set existed. When the war ended, much of what did exist was bombed, seized, or lost in the displacement of populations and industrial records that followed the German collapse. Before we continue, if this kind of railway history matters to you, consider subscribing to the channel. Every video here is built around the locomotives and railway systems that the standard histories overlooked, the machines that outperformed their celebrated counterparts, the engineering decisions that were ahead of their time, and the railway lines that shaped nations without receiving the recognition they deserved. If that is the kind of documentary worth watching to you, the subscribe button is how you tell us, and we want to hear from you. Did you work on the railways? As a driver, a fireman, a fitter, a signalman, a track engineer? Did a parent or grandparent spend their career on a railway that is no longer operating, on a locomotive class that is no longer preserved, or in a workshop that is no longer standing? Leave it in the comments. The people who actually operated these machines know things that do not appear in any published railway history. We want to hear from them. Now, back to the locomotive. By 1945, the East German Deutsche Reichsbahn had inherited approximately 800 Class 52 locomotives. No master drawings, no central technical authority, just the machines themselves, worn and battle-stressed, and the men in the workshops who had been maintaining them since the war ended. These were the Lokomotivschlosser, the locomotive fitters. They had spent years learning the Class 52, not from documentation, but from the machine itself. They knew which boiler stays cracked first and why. They knew the cast cylinder block's tendency to develop hairline fractures under the thermal cycling of hard freight work. They knew the coal consumption figures that the wartime specification had never bothered to calculate properly. When the DR's engineering leadership at RAW Stendhal began planning the reconstruction program in the late 1950s, they started not with a complete set of factory drawings, because none existed, but with the knowledge accumulated in the hands and memory of those fitters. The result was not a repair, it was a redesign, and the specification for that redesign came, in significant part, from the men who had maintained the failures for 15 years and knew exactly what needed to change. In early summer 1960, the first Class 52 entered the Reichsbahn-Ausbesserungswerk at Stendhal as a candidate for reconstruction. What emerged was designated Class 52.80. The changes were comprehensive. In the original riveted boiler, cracked and fatigued beyond economic repair in many units, was replaced entirely with the Type 50E welded combustion chamber boiler developed for the Class 50.35. It ran at 228 pounds per square inch. It was stronger, more efficient, and better suited to the low-grade lignite coal that East Germany's grid depended on. The cast cylinder blocks that the Stendhal fitters had been patching for years were replaced with fabricated welded steel cylinders, 600 mm bore, 660 mm stroke, no more hairline fractures. An IFS mixer preheater system was installed, recovering heat from the exhaust and returning it to the feed water. The wartime design had wasted it entirely. 200 locomotives were rebuilt this way between 1960 and 1967. Each one took approximately 6 weeks at Stendhal. Each emerged with a designed service life, decades beyond anything the original wartime specification had envisaged. The Class 52 had been designed for 5 years. The Class 52.80 worked into the 1980s. Some ran for 40 years. The Class 52.80 does not appear in most histories of 20th century locomotive engineering. The Union Pacific Big Boy, built in 1941, is in every one. But the Big Boy was built with complete drawings, adequate time, and an industrial infrastructure designed for peacetime production. It was an extraordinary engineering achievement on those terms. The Class 52.80 was something different. It was built from the knowledge that accumulates in 15 years of keeping a failed design running, from the fitter who knew which boiler stay would crack next, the driver who had memorized the point on every gradient where the original machine's power fell away, the workshop foreman who had written the modifications in a notebook rather than a technical order because there was no technical order to write them in. When the blueprints do not exist, the machine is not lost. It lives in the men who operate it. The last Class 52.80 was withdrawn from regular service in East Germany in 1988. Some examples continued in industrial use beyond that. A number are preserved. The original wartime specification gave them 5 years. The fitters at Stendhal gave them 40. If this is the kind of railway history you want to keep watching, subscribe to the channel. There are more locomotives, more railway systems, and more engineering achievements still to document. And if you have a connection to what you just watched, a family member who drove a Class 52, worked in the workshops at Stendhal or Meiningen, or operated on a railway that ran these machines, tell us in the comments, what did they drive? Which railway? which depot, which line. The people who operated these machines are not in the standard histories, but the engineering record depends on what they remember. We want to hear from them.